Hello and welcome to New in Chess Masterclass Part 2. We celebrate the publication of a new book called The Most Exciting Chess Games You've Ever Seen. My name is Raymond Autumn, I'm publisher at New in Chess. We publish books and we publish the magazine, New in Chess magazine. In that magazine we have a column, a backpage column called Chess Checking, and chess experts, grandmasters, world champions, but also book authors or streamers, they get asked a lot of questions, but one of the questions is, what is the most exciting chess game you've ever seen? And 45 of those nominations have been edited and selected for this book, which was done by Steve Giddins. And we've asked Matthew Sadler to present 4 of his favorite games. The first one is already out, and the second one is Karpov-Yusupov, a positional masterpiece. So please enjoy part 2 of the New in Chess Masterclass.
Doing this, we're going to test your positional play here because the next game is going to be a game of Anatoly Karpov against Artur Yusupov. So let's have a look. Is everyone ready? Let's start. Short break. I'm fine. I'm just clicking and enjoying myself and setting you quizzes. Obviously, you know, if anyone fancies a break, then don't feel free. But I guess I'm just going to keep on going unless people people particularly want me to stop. But happy to keep on going. So let's do that. So this is for lovers of the Open Spanish. This is Anatoly Karpov against Artur Yusupov from the Russian Championship. I can't remember when, 1985, 6, something like that. Certainly, it's a game that I knew when I was very little, so it must be around that time. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, and now knight takes e4. And knight e4 has actually got rather popular recently. I think you can often tell that openings are going to be popular based on if you just let the top engines analyze and then say what their top recommendation is. And I noticed that a little while back the Lila engine, which is used by an awful lot of the very top professionals, Jan Nepomniachtchi used it heavily in his match against Magnus Carlsen. But Lila has switched to liking knight takes e4 as the best move there, whereas normally the Marshall gambit is the favoured move in the Rai Lopez, after the Berlin, of course. The Berlin's always there. So not surprised then to see that, for example, Fabiano Caruana played this against Hikaru Nakamura in the Madrid candidates. Not successfully, unfortunately. It was a fantastic game from Hikaru, but it was not surprising to see it suddenly rising in popularity. And there's been, sort of loads and loads of theory in this. Bishop e3 was very popular for a long time, and this was because Paul Keres beat Max Euwe in the 1948 World Championships with it. 1983. Thank you very much, Darklink. Beat Max Euwe in an absolutely fantastic game in this line. This made this Bishop e3 line very popular. We've also got knight bd2, queen e2, also a very popular move. Karpov plays, the old classical move, c3. What's the idea? The idea is that the bishop can come to c2, and we're going to develop the knight to d2. I mean, Black's knight on e4 is it's sort of a bit of both, really. It's a strong piece, so in some ways White wants to get rid of it. It's also can end up being the most exposed piece on the board, and we're going to see a little bit of that in the game. But in general, White's idea is to play bishop c2, knight d2, challenge that knight on e4, get rid of it, and then claim that Black's got nothing out of the opening. So bishop c5 played, knight bd2. Castles and bishop c2, and Black's got a few possibilities here. Knight f2, known as the Dilworth in England. I'm not sure whether it's known as that elsewhere in the rest of the world, but we claim our pioneers. And this was actually played by Fabiano Caruana. This was the line that he played. Takes and f6, and you sacrifice knight and bishop for rook and pawn. Not so great, but you also open up the f file as well. Actually, I mean, Hikaru, well worth seeing that game at the candidates. Played an absolutely incredible game to win that, but it was unbelievably complicated. But that's more, the style of a Caruana. Artur Yusupov, much more solid and restrained guy. So he plays bishop f5, just keeping the knight on e4 and eyeing up really some exchanges. But now the whole position turns, actually. The whole because Karpov plays knight b3, bishop g6. The threat was to take on c5 and take on f5. So bishop g6 just ensures that after knight c5, the bishop's protected and we go bishop takes g6. That's the idea. So now a very common move, knight fd4. And here a plan that will absolutely shock you if you don't know, if you haven't seen many positions in the Open Lopez. Certainly this put me off playing the Open Lopez from very early on, because I couldn't get my head around, as a little kid, I couldn't get my head around that black wanted to do this. But bishop d4 and c takes d4. So we should have a little think about this position, because I mean it's definitely gone a little bit weird. I mean, black's position just really makes me very, very nervous here. Why? Well, the point is that we've got some huge weaknesses right out of the opening. I mean, we really do have some stuff that's long term looking very problematic. I mean, first of all, the square on c5, all these queenside dark squares, in actual fact, and even the kingside dark squares. I mean, I've got no dark square bishop to defend. So, if this pawn never moved, these dark squares here would be very weak as well. So that's making me very nervous. The second thing that's making me really nervous is my knight on e4, because that's only got one square, which is a little bit tenuous, only protected by the queen. And that means that white could, easily get in f3 just to trap that knight. And of course, just drive the knight away from e4, and this white knight is getting into c5. So yeah, all of that just makes me, really, really nervous. And of course, if dynamics didn't exist in chess, then this would just be completely winning for white. But dynamics do exist. It's not actually, again, just for me, it's not intuitively obvious that where my dynamics are coming from. But yeah, this was actually stems from a game, Karpov against Savon, 1971, I think, or 73 maybe. Black can actually play the move a5 in this position. And yeah, your idea is to anticipate white's pressure against this knight by counterattacking this one. So if you go f3, black will play the move a4, which turns out is not at all bad for black at all. If the knight goes to c5, for example, we'll just take it off, and then we'll grab this pawn on e5. And if you play the knight, if you take on e4, I take on b3, intermediate move. Bishop takes, only move because the pawn is pinned, and then bishop takes e4, and well, actually, a nice active bishop on e4. That's not looking at all bad for black somehow. So yeah, all these very tenuous dynamics, they're all keeping black alive. But white plays the sensible move, bishop e3, and protecting the pawn on d4. Now the knight can retreat. And we're still threatening the move f2 to f3. But black keeps on going. a4, chasing the knight away. And this was actually Yusupov's improvement over this previous game, Karpov-Savon, Moscow in 1971, where Savon played much less well and just ended up in a really rotten position. This was how Yusupov thought that should be done. I think it was even a recommendation of Karpov. To be honest, that shows quite a lot of courage from Yusupov following a recommendation of Karpov's, because they weren't always the most reliable. You did have the feeling that he sometimes recommended stuff that wasn't necessarily the best, hoping to get it against him next time. But this turned out to be a good suggestion. So and here white's actually got to make a choice, and quite interesting. We can go back to d2. If we go back to d2, then the likelihood that pieces get exchanged is quite high. So it's not the first move that would occur to me. The first move that I'd want to play would be the move knight c1, which is pretty ambitious. But the knight b3 is coming round to d3. aiming for that square. And of course, we're keeping f2 to f3 in reserve, just so that would be the move that I would want to play. And we're going to follow up with a little quiz here, because black plays a3, and the idea of a3 is to free c3 for the knight. So hey, if you go f3, I can go knight c3. White plays knight e2. And now we have a little quiz. What does black play now? Quiz. So let's have a look. What does black play now? I'm seeing some pretty good suggestions, actually. Probably the move that I put is not necessarily the... oh, wow, that's aggressive. Yeah, this is my own analysis, so it could could all be completely wrong, of course. Oh, there's some cunning ideas in there. Absolutely. Yeah, a nice range. I mean, it's not the move that I said is not absolutely necessary, but I just thought it was quite typical. We saw some very nice stuff there. Bishop h5. Well done, EGM Cummins, for spotting this one, by the way, because it's a very cunning idea. The idea is that the bishop's pinning the knight. You're threatening knight c3, and f3 fails to rook takes c3. That's a very nice idea. In actual fact, white does have a decent move against that, which is to play queen e1, which steps out of the pin and threatens knight f4, and also covers this knight from coming into b4. So I don't think it's the best move for black, but brilliant to have spotted that idea. Really nice idea to spot. It was the first thing that occurred to me in this position. So we're obviously thinking alike in terms of being cunning with tactics. Yeah, I've got some other very aggressive moves. Queen a8 was one idea. I think Queen a8, we get bishop b3, which can be maybe a little bit annoying here, because we're going to have f3 and we're also attacking the pawn on d5 there. I seem to remember that was quite annoying for black there. Queen h4 is very aggressive. I'm not 100% sure about it. What I'm always getting nervous about then is stuff like bishop c1, chasing the rook away, and then afterwards playing f3. I think that was the problem with it, but I don't actually know that for sure. But I think queen h4 was not the best. B4 is a pretty decent idea, sort of holding knight on c3. Knight b4, which was Micah's choice, Luciana's choice, quite a few other people as well, is definitely a very interesting move. Yeah, I mean that one's definitely interesting. But after bishop b1, or even actually, I think bishop b3 was the problem. Yeah, again, we're cutting off this pressure on the third rank, and then f3 is getting a little bit irritating. I thought that was maybe not the nicest thing. The move I wanted to play actually was quite simple. Was just to go knight c3, with the idea that takes, rook c1, and then we go takes, and then we play this move rook c4, which is quite nice, and just establish this this rook on c4, and then afterwards we're going to aim to get our pieces active. It was working out quite well for black in the engine playouts that I played with black. Well, I was managing to draw this position. So, I mean, if I manage to do that against my engines, then you know that it must be a decent continuation. You're, by the way, you're sort of seeing the value of this c4 square, and that's going to be key in the next few moves. So, knight d2 was played by Karpov. So, not knight c1, knight d2. a3 played by Yusupov. Knight takes e4, a takes b2, little intermediate move, and then rook b1. And now it's nothing tactical in this or anything, but I'm just going to give you a little quiz, and it's more a positional consideration. What would you consider to be the best way to take on e4? Is it to take with the pawn, or is it to take with the bishop on e4? let nobody not take back on e4. That's that's the key thing. But and it's not a right or wrong thing. It's just yeah, interesting. And to be honest, I think bishop takes e4 is definitely the move that I think positional players will play. And I think that that d takes e4 is the move that more tactical players will play. I got very interested in d takes e4, which sort of tells you, you know, who I am. And but I see that most people have played bishop takes e4. But you know, both you couldn't give yourself credit for both of them because both of them are interesting. I mean, why do I like d takes e4? You know, in some ways, it's it does feel quite odd to leave this bishop just protecting a pawn on e4, and you know, it's just like just protecting a pawn, really. You know, wouldn't it be better to exchange off the bishops then? The one thing is that you know, it sort of keeps the white pieces on the queen side a little bit cooped up somehow, you know. And I was feeling that you had a good chance of playing a move like queen d7 and getting some rapid play against the d4 pawn. You know, that seemed really interesting somehow. And actually, this worked out quite decently in my engine games. I think I even managed to draw one of these as well with black. I was in good form there. So, for example, I think a4 was played, rook d8, rook b5, knight takes d4. And, you know, this is a little bit better for white with a passed a pawn and a slightly weak pawns here and here, but it's not too bad for black. But bishop takes e4 is the positional move. You're just saying, well, I'm going to make sure that you know, that if my bishop gets exchanged, that I've got no passive piece, just defending a pawn. And of course, I'm freeing, you know, squares like d5 for the queen. One drawback to it, and this is why you know, Karpov is who he is that Karpov doesn't take on e4 then. So he doesn't give you that freedom to attack this d pawn. Karpov is just going to let black take the light squared bishop, and then you're going to end up with a slightly different structure. That's, well, it's kind of harder for black to get at white's pieces. So queen d7 was played, and then bishop d3 from Karpov. And now, not the only move, bishop d3 was played by Yusupov, and now queen takes d3. And a good moment to sort of think about this this position again. You know, it's always nice just to reflect on that. I mean, in some ways, black's position still looks unbelievably ugly. I mean, we still got, you know, this weak pawn on b5 and this horrible square on c5, and yeah, a backward c pawn and a knight on c6 in front of the c pawn, which is really horrible. However, you know, the knight on e4 has been removed, so that was the constant tactical headache for black. So that's gone, and we've opened up some channels on the queen side. So we've got the a file, for example, for a rook, and you know, you could imagine doubling up against the a pawn, or even putting pressure on the d4 pawn. So that's really, you know, not bad. Now the interesting thing is that you know, you could choose two plans really. You could just try and play something like b4 and just then try and line up on the a pawn, which, to be honest, would probably be my main idea. And actually, it's the engine's favorite move of doing it. For example, b4, f4, rook a3, queen e2, and queen f5. And you know, we're just trying to get all sorts of activity with the major pieces, really. That's what the engine wants to use. But Yusupov here, Yusupov formulated a completely different plan. And his idea was that he at all costs wanted to bring his knight into this c4 outpost, which, I mean, you know, is great. I think, you know, in general terms, that's a very understandable plan. Move the knight to c4. The funny thing is, though, is that this desire, you know, very good positional desire from Yusupov turns out to be his downfall, because for the rest of the game, Artur is trying to get the knight to c4, and Karpov's only goal is to stop him. And Karpov is so successful at stopping Artur from getting a knight to c4 that Artur becomes completely confused and starts just losing the plot completely. And I mean, this game is really instructive from that point of view, because I have had that same sort of psychological situation. I'm trying to think exactly who it was. It was someone like Kramnik or Ivanchuk, where I just wanted to achieve something and I just kept on being stopped. My opponent wasn't doing anything positive, just stopping me from achieving my stuff. And in the end, I just went bananas and started attacking on the king side and just lost everything, you know. And looking at the game, looking at my game, you wouldn't really see why on earth did this seemingly strong player suddenly go bananas. But it was just the frustration of having the plan I wanted to achieve constantly frustrated was enough to completely kill me psychologically. So, I mean, actually, one thing that that I thought about was maybe could you just go knight a5 immediately if you wanted to do this and just sacrifice a pawn like this? Because, yeah, you know, after queen e2, you go knight c4 and queen f5, and then we're going to go rook a3 and rook a8 and, oops, sorry, rook a3 and rook a8 and c5 and all that stuff, maybe. Not so bad. I've never seen it suggested anywhere, but I think it's, you know, definitely an idea, just a very active idea. You say, don't worry about my pawn. I'm just going to achieve my goal, and that's it. Sometimes quite a powerful way of playing. Yusupov played rook b8 just to keep hold of his pawn. The idea is that, yeah, I mean, obviously, if you take on b5, then a2 is always going to be hanging. So rook b8 defends b5, and black's aiming to go knight a5 to c4. So rook b1 is what Karpov did. Now, I do have to say, actually, that for the engines, rook b1 is actually a poor move. They don't really appreciate this whole psychological play of understanding that your opponent wants to achieve something, so stopping him. Because my engines just want to power through with f4 on the king side, and actually it's really dangerous. Yeah, if you keep on going with stuff like b4 or knight a5, then we just carry on with f5, and you know, we've got f6 coming in, e6 and f6 as a pawn sacrifice coming in. It's just really, really dangerous. Yusupov suggested a few moves. One idea he suggested was to go f5 here, but after takes, he was looking at all sorts of attacks on the king side. But actually, my engine just wanted to play rook takes b5, which is going to lead us to our next quiz competition very soon. Because why does this win a pawn for white? Because surely black can just take on a2, and after takes, go here. So what we're going to do, we've got a little quiz here where we say, what is white's best idea? Oh, it's a bit longer, this one. I'll give you 45 seconds. There's about 3 moves to make here. So this is the move where white grabs the pawn, and you say, why can white grab a pawn? Why can't black grab this pawn on a2? There's some rather nice geometrical tactics. Think, yeah, hitting stuff all over the side of the board. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're going to. I think you're going. Yes. I think people are seeing the right idea here, but they're unfortunately I've selected one specific move. But I think you got most of you got it there. If you played queen b3, maybe look at a different queen move. There we are. So yeah, I'm sorry. I was recommending queen b1, which was the only move that I really noticed was legal. But queen b3 achieves exactly the same. So if you got that, it's pretty good. Yeah, a couple of people got my solution, which is great. I'm sure most of you got that. It's rook a8, and then we go the move queen b7, hitting the rook on a8, knight on b8. Queen c6 is the only move. And then we've got queen c8 check, and the black king is in huge trouble. We're going to be going rook f3 to g3, and it's going to be curtains pretty soon for the black king. So, but if you found queen b3, then don't worry. And Altimaret saw an idea with rook f3 earlier. I mean, also very promising as well. Essentially, you know, black's king side is too weak, so he can't actually grab the pawn back. So yeah, so I mean, actually, this move f4 would be, you know, just very, very strong. But yeah, Karpov is just fixated on stopping something from happening. And the interesting thing now is that black plays b4, and the engine is saying, "Yay, that's the move I wanted to play. Now I can line up on the a file." But Artur Yusupov in his annotations was saying, oh my goodness, I've been forced to play b4, so it's going to be much harder now to get my knight in a5 to c4. Amazing, actually, how, you know, the player's perception of what the struggle is in the game and what needs to be achieved, you know, really affects how they assess it, which is actually nothing to do with the assessment of the game. Ooh, any tricks for evaluating when to employ prophylaxis and when to proceed with your own idea? That's a really good question, Dylan M. In all fairness, I think, you know, if I can think of something active to play, then I will do it in general. If I can't think of anything active to play, then I'll start looking at prophylaxis, and then I'll be able to claim that I'm a grandmaster, and of course that I master, you know, the art of prophylaxis. But that's really because I think it depends a lot also on your style. I mean, Karpov is just a guy who, before he even looks at what he has to do, he's looking straight away at how can I prevent the opponent from doing what he wants. I mean, I think all top players, you know, master it and can apply it in positions, but it's really depending on your heart, really, what you do. I mean, I'm always looking for active stuff. You know, some more people like Salov or Karpov, you know, Kramnik, they're always looking for, oh, how can I stop my opponent? But my general rule of thumb for myself is if I can really think of something active, then I will do it. If I'm not really clear on an active plan, then I'm going to look for prophylaxis, think, okay, then what does my opponent want to do? Let's try and restrict that. I mean, Bereyev gave a lecture once, and actually it's in Dvoretsky's books. It's a really, one of the Grandmaster preparation books or something like that. It's a really lovely lecture where he explained that in a position, he was unable to think of a plan for himself, but he just sort of thought, he was just looking at Karpov's moves, and Karpov as white was playing certain strange moves, and they were helping Baryev to understand, oh, Karpov thinks that I should be doing this in the position. Right, well, that should be my plan then. Karpov was so busy trying to prevent Baryev from doing stuff, it helped Baryev to find out what he should be doing in the position, because Baryev himself didn't have much of a clue. One of Bareyev's most famous victories over Karpov. I mean, another time that I do think a lot about prophylaxis is that I'm playing a very strong attacking player. Then you do tend to think that, you know, prophylaxis, stopping his stuff as early as you can possibly think, that's probably quite a good idea. But then you have to know your opponent for that. Yeah, really should have done a bit more of that when I was playing Judith. I have to say that playing Judith, it was always, I was always looking at the ravages of my king's side very early in the game. But b4, Engine says, great. Artur Yusupov was getting depressed about it. So h3 from Karpov, a very nice simple move there. h6 from Yusupov, a little bit slow. Again, the Engine's more thinking of player move like rook b6 or rook a4. Let's get our counterplay moving. But that's not what Artur was thinking of. Artur was still thinking of how on earth do I get my knight to c4. Now Karpov starts playing, you know, some really beautiful stuff here. He plays the move rook c1. Rook c1. What on earth's happening here? Why are you releasing the pressure on b4? Why can't you play the move knight a5? Well, let's have a little quiz on that one. Go. And this is where you really start understanding, you know, the essence of Karpov's style. And it's a very simple first move with a little tactical, venomous tactical point at the end. That's sort of 5 or 6 moves further on. Let's have a look. It's a very difficult one, this one. Amazingly difficult, actually. Nobody's actually got it. Yeah, it is a very difficult one. Yeah, once you've understood it, then it's good. Yeah, the key thing, I mean, a move like rook c5 is not bad, actually. Gets the rook at least ahead of the knight when it moves to c4. Rook cb1 would be very subtle, just returning like that. But the key move, the one that Karpov played, is the move queen b1. Hitting b4, yeah, and that's why Karpov spotted that when he went to rook c1, the queen could retreat to b1. And the big idea is that after knight c4, we can just take the pawn on b4, because there's this venomous trick that's so easy to miss. But yeah, this is a sort of thing that if you spot these sort of things during a game, then you find it. Oh, come on, let's do a quick quiz there. Let's do it. Well, I'm not going to give you 45 seconds for that. Start quiz. White to play and win in 2 moves. Yeah, we're seeing it. Good. Yeah, go for it. Seeing lots of good things there. Still a couple of not quite right answers. Nearly right. There we are. Well, we got most people came up with the right idea, which is brilliant. Well played. Which is Queen B8 check, King H7, and Queen B1 check for King and Rook. I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, it's really, to be honest, this is what you see. You know, it's an even deeper level with engines. You know, just this mixture of a subtle positional point with this venomous tactical twist at the end. You know, and yeah, again, this is the very highest level of technique and prophylaxis and everything. You know, it's really quite beautiful. So Rook C1 played. So Rook B6 played by Arthur. Just preparing, you know, to maybe to make this just a little bit easier. This Knight A5 to C4 idea. Queen B1 played by Karpov. So stopping Knight A5 by attacking the pawn on B4. So Arthur went Rook B8 and thought, haha, my pawn is protected. Knight A5 into C4 is coming in. Only that wasn't true, because here Karpov played the great move Rook C5, stopping the knight from coming to A5. I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, it's pressure against the B pawn on B4, stopping the knight from C6, all sorts of subtle little maneuvers. But, you know, Arthur described, you know, again, how that he was going bananas, right? I mean, every time he thought he was going to achieve something, he was being balked by Karpov. So for the moment, he kept his head. Knight D8 was played. And the idea is to go Knight B7, chase that rook away, and then go Knight A5. Use that tempo against the rook on C5. Brilliant. Let's do that. However, after Knight D8, Karpov played the move Rook CC2. And what's the point of Rook CC2? Well, the idea is if you go Knight B7 now, I just go Rook B4. You're not getting a tempo against the rook on C5 anymore. So, yeah, I mean, just from, you know, Rook CC2 played. Just so Black can't play Knight B7 to A5 anymore. So Arthur played Knight C6 again. You know, just okay, I'm going to come round to A5 to C4. Can you imagine how much frustration Arthur's got just being within, you know, reach almost of those of that square and not being able to do it? Because well, you know, the let's do a quick quiz. Can you guess what Karpov did now? We'll give you 20 seconds on that one. Can you guess what Karpov's move was? I'm seeing some good guesses here. You're getting into the swing of things. Well done. Think subtle. Amazing play. I mean, it's really, you know, this is really, this is elite play. Yeah, brilliant. A lot of people have got that. Yeah, Rook C5 would just repeat. That's why that's not the correct move. The correct move, pointed out by many people, was Queen C1. And what's the idea of Queen C1? We're attacking the pawn on C7. So you can't move the knight to A5 because we'll have Rook C7 there. So poor old Arthur went Rook 8 B7. And what did Karpov do? Knight A5 is threatened because C7 is attacked. He went Rook C5. He went Rook C5. And now, of course, we don't even have this Knight D8 to B7 maneuver threat again because the Rook's gone to B7. And I mean, it's one of those. Mihail Marin gave some lectures, and he sort of said that in a lot of Karpov's games, you sort of see that Karpov makes, you know, like 5 or 6 moves, and nothing seems to have changed, but somehow he seems to have got better, and nobody understands why. And this is really, you know, this is looking at this game just without spending any time, analysing it, you could really think the same. But actually, what's just happened here is that, this knight has been totally blocked, completely blocked now from going to a5 to c4. And Karpov just moved his pieces around with some good play there. Now, the funny thing is that the engine doesn't consider that anything has gone particularly bad. Still considers the position to be a slight edge for white, just as it was before. But Artur was going completely bananas by now. Getting short of time, getting frustrated, feeling like he was being outplayed, made a mockery of, and he just went completely bananas. And bear in mind, I mean, Artur is an absolute top-class grandmaster. Really highest class possible. Really good positional player as well, and that he gets this feeling against Karpov, it just shows Karpov's strength. So King H2 was played by Karpov, and here Artur had enough really. I mean, I think what he was seeing, this move King H2, it's a very Alpha Zero move, I have to say. Alpha Zero always, when you expected Alpha Zero to take action, it was always spending a move or two just getting its king safe. But the idea is simply that Karpov is thinking, well, I'm just getting ready to advance the pawns. And Artur, seeing all this, feeling that he just moved his pieces around for no particular reason for the last 7 or 8 moves, he played the move knight f5, which is a little bit balmy because after knight f5, Karpov just played rook c2, and my goodness, all of a sudden, impossible to hold the c7 pawn. Just like that, one incautious move from Artur, probably played quickly out of frustration, and all of a sudden you're just losing the c pawn. And the problem is that once you lose the c pawn, these other 2 pawns are completely isolated, of course. So it's not just one pawn that's going; it's going to be more than that. Artur went for the big kingside counterattack. This is how I would have played with black. It's just a bit shocking to see such a solid player as Artur, going for this. And here you see, often, the whole thing of, what do strong players see when they're calculating, kind of topical in the current chess life. But here you really see what elite players can do really well when the position is clear enough, a clear enough advantage for one side. Then the elite players can calculate really, really well. And Karpov does this in this game, playing incredibly concrete moves that you wouldn't always think of, but just to put through the advantage. So G4, Knight H4, and then Rook C8 check, and Queen D1. And the Queen is covering the F3 square, so the Knight can't get in there. Artur played the move Queen A6, attacking the pawn on A2. Rook C2 played, the Rook on C8 was attacked, Rook C2, and now F5. And here, Karpov, showed that real, the calculation that elite players are capable of. And you'd call it computer-like if this game wasn't played in 1983. But this is the stuff that you're not surprised when elite players find. We're going to do a little quiz on there. Can you find White's next move? We'll give you 20 seconds for that. Bearing in mind that that knight on h4 does not have many squares. Excellent. Seeing some good answers there. Seeing some very good answers there. Right, we got lots of different answers here. I have to say G5 from Dylan. I do quite like. That's quite a nice idea as well. Just to try and keep the knight blocked. I guess H takes G5 is going to be a bit annoying somehow, but it's a nice, a very nice idea there. The best move, in actual fact, is the move King G3, using the king to attack that knight that can't be defended. And the only thing that you do have to watch out for is, are we going to go? Can we sort of open up the white king? But Karpov had calculated very, very accurately that he can just keep everything at bay. Not easy, have to say. You would be a bit nervous, especially coming towards move 40. But after Queen E6, Queen H5, This is a very concrete way of playing, and we're just going to threaten f5, block the queen away, and after you go queen e7, king h3. There's a last little trick here, queen f7. Can you work out the move that Karpov played? I don't know whether it's the only one that wins, but in terms of fitting Karpov's style, that you work out what the opponent's threat is, and then all that you do, you don't do anything else, you just prevent it. Then I think that this really sums up Karpov's character, I think, in the best possible way. Oh, lots of people guessing it. Excellent. Sometimes, I mean, it really is fun. I can really recommend it to play through Karpov's best games and then afterwards play a game afterwards. You really do spot stuff that you wouldn't normally spot. I can definitely guarantee it. He does have a tremendous instructive value, Karpov's games. The only thing that I do find is that his comments are sometimes not very helpful. But maybe it just shows, the way that he thinks about chess, and it's rather different to how I think. But I do find some of his comments not superb. But the games themselves are amazing. And if you get someone like Michal Marin annotating them, then it's an absolute joy. Rook, yeah, I mean, the threat was rook g3 check, which is, and if king h4, then rook h3 is nasty. So you really needed to stop that. So moves like rook g2 would not work because we just go check and then rook here. But the move that a lot of you found, and I love it, I really do love it, and it's so Karpovian, is the move rook h2. So you just protect the queen on there, and after rook g3 check, king g3. And the whole basis of it is that White's next move is going to be f5. Black's got nothing to do there. And well, the game ended very soon. Queen d7, f5, and Yusupov resigned. So very different type of game to the one we saw first of all. It was very subtle and positional in some ways, but I mean, I hope you get a feel for that game. I mean, if you want to know, if you want to have a good model game for prophylaxis, for thinking of what your opponent's idea is, and then putting everything into the game in order just to stop that, then I mean, this is the model game for me. It's what I always think of when I'm thinking prophylaxis, because it's just so powerful. And Yusupov's comments were really hilarious as well in some ways. Just explaining how he was feeling when it was happening, because it's really very recognizable indeed.